It's been a while since I've done a video recording, and I want to start getting back into the swing of that. And I had something in particular I wanted to talk about today because it is strongly on my mind and has also been presented to me in a variety of different ways today, which is one of the things that I love, being directed. And one of my cards that I had created for my storytelling with different images of different pieces of my artwork, I had pulled this out this morning. I just flipped through them and I thought, oh, I really love this. Wanted to hold on to it. And I looked at the back and it says courage. Well, that's the title of the drawing. And I kind of relate to it. I don't know how well that's going to come out, but yeah, it's kind of a motherly, nurturing vibe. And then inside of, in the center in here, you see like what look like some eggs. There's a lot, it's very verdant, a lot of things growing in there. And, as I'm looking at that, it's coming to me that like that is an aspect of my better nature, even though it's courage, even though I called it courage. And even though as I looked at that, I thought, well, I want to talk about this as it relates to shadow work. And sometimes, because I create my artwork in a stream of consciousness way, I'm discovering the drawing as I'm creating it. And sometimes when I'm finished and I look at it, I'm amazed at what it's showing me. And this one is making me feel emotional right now. So maybe I'm going to talk more about this, because when I'm looking, as I close in on it, you see there's so many things that I end up finding that I really didn't, I don't notice at first. And she's also, her face, it's like she's coming out of a flower. And I don't know if this has a kind of a snail-like feeling to it, but she looks very peaceful. She looks very, I want to say, like, I don't know, content, what the best way to describe that. But anyway, point about it, whenever I look at it, I don't see all of that, because I look at it as a composition. I look at it, when I see it as the essence of the mother, the fertile creations that this woman, and it's not because it's necessarily either about women or mothers, but if you think about the vibration of motherhood is creator. And so any of us, when we're in an act of creation, are essentially tuning into the vibration of motherhood and creating babies. When I do my drawings, they're my babies. All of my artwork that I have around me, I relate to it because it's part of me. I always have a hard time selling it because it's me. I'm in all my drawings because that's what I'm doing. I am telling stories of life. And this coming up today relates to the idea of shadow work, in that and when I say shadow work, I'm talking about looking at having the courage to look at aspects of yourself that you'd rather not see for whatever reason. Usually, well, I don't know about usually, but often we don't want to see them because they represent an aspect of ourselves that we're not proud of, or that that it could be something that reminds us of times past that we don't want to be reminded of, or it could be that we have caused harm to others, and it's going to remind us of that. And many of the things that we hold in the shadows are things that we actually have no memory or awareness of anymore, and that's why they're so they feel so toxic. And I want to clarify that I'm not going to say the shadow itself is toxic, but the repression of it can be toxic. And it can be toxic because anything that we repress, anything that we block, anything that we hold on to, physically, emotionally, psychologically, creates stagnation, blockage, and problems. That is where pain comes from. That is where sadness, that's where all of our lower vibration emotions come from. And if we don't acknowledge those shadows, we can't clear some of that. Or I could say it differently, that if we want to clear things, you feel in a mood to clear things, dig into your shadow. Some people will do that, literally do a meditation or workshop geared toward pulling things out of the shadows, because all those things weigh us down. And everybody has stuff. We all have stuff. And we're more often than not continue to put stuff in the shadows. So it takes courage to be willing to look at that. But what I really wanted to talk about is that it is how we're called to look at it, which requires a lot of courage if we're willing. Because while you could, go to a workshop or a dialogue with a therapist to try to dig into your shadow, because you might want to find out why you're acting out something unconsciously that potentially has roots in something inside of you. But our shadow is also just the emotions that we don't like: anger, fear, judgment. There's so many. I don't like to talk a lot about them because I don't want to like add to my I already got enough on my plate right now. So how our shadow is served up to us for clearing is generally something that comes at us. It feels like something is coming at us. We might feel attacked. We might feel judged. We might feel, someone gets angry at us or yells at us. We hurt someone's feelings and they start crying. We have a choice to make, and we make a choice that might be more selfish, and somebody calls us out on it. Those are just a few things, but there's just all kinds of things where what happens is someone externally says or does something that that feels like this to you. And more often than not, instead of responding, we react. And a reaction is different than a response. A response takes a moment. With a response, you take a moment, you ingest and digest the experience, and then you respond. When we get a lot of shadow, sometimes what happens is we just react. That's when we blow up. That's when we say things that we regret later. That's when we make matters worse. And a lot of people get very caught up in, blaming other people for, whatever emotion they're experiencing. Whereas really it's all someone else may be doing something that's going to cause you to feel a certain way, but your reaction, your response, your reaction, your what you do. Siri's trying to help me out. What you do that you end up maybe having to clean up later, that's all you. Another person may have been involved, but they were only a catalyst for what you needed to look at, for what you have inside of you. Because if you didn't have a shadow, if you didn't have shadow work, if you didn't have some kind of blockage related to that experience or the emotion that you responded with, it wouldn't affect you that way. But the reason it affects us and affects us deeply is because it's significant for us in some way. It may not be the exact emotion, but there is a very strong emotion associated with that experience that we are harboring, that we don't want to look at. And when we don't want to look at it, we push it down, we sweep it under the rug, or we attempt to put it on other people and things, the traffic, the, some financial thing, the dog. And that prevents us from stopping and looking at that thing that is harbored inside of us. In order to be able to do that, it really takes the courage of willingness to see either where you're falling down or where you're, and it's so human, but we're trying not to be that part of our humanity, but we can't help it. We all get afraid sometimes. We all get jealous sometimes. We all get angry sometimes. And if we have a lot of repression around any of those types of emotions, when we get triggered by an external experience, if it catches us at just the wrong time, sometimes you just snap. That's when people snap. Other times it might not be so big of a deal, but you might say something and then later you're feeling the consequences of that. The importance, I believe, in shadow work isn't just taking time to clear some things or to be willing to look at something and then take responsibility, make amends if you need to make amends, or let people who are affected know that you are aware, that you're not going to just, because what happens around us, sometimes we get frustrated, you tell someone something, your insecurity is driving me crazy. And then that person keeps doing that behavior and we get so frustrated. But if they heard what you said and they realized that they may or may not be insecure, but maybe they needed to look at that. And maybe it was insecurity, or maybe it's something else that's hiding under insecurity. Their behavior comes across in a way that makes maybe the other person, in my case, I'm saying me, feel as though they're insecure. That may not be what it is, because that's them. That's not me. I don't know what I can't speak for that, but I might say something to them, and then they may hear that and they may say, quit calling me insecure, and then they're going to react. Okay. But it might be that if they have courage, instead of just reacting, they take a moment and they think about it, and then they look at, am I insecure? Or maybe even look a little deeper and say, well, the behavior that I just exhibited that caused this other person to call me insecure might be actually fear. And it might be fear of you know, fear of being attacked, or it could be fear of loss, it could be fear. There's so many different things it could be. But my point about it is to just say, in a moment, you know, it's a lifetime of work. But the more we can practice taking that moment when we feel what a lot of people would call feeling triggered, when we feel a gut reaction to something, or a gut pang to something external, whether it's a person or a thing or an experience, or, you know, whatever it is outside of us, that we practice taking a moment to understand that experience just came to us for us to look at, for us to think about, and potentially for us to do a little refining of our character. I mean, that is a shred of the concept of shadow work, but hopefully that gives a little bit of a flavor, at least a little bit of the initial chipping away at those things that cause us to be less than the fullness of who we are as a human being.